All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Girish Bhatia, and our topic for this session is AWS S3 static website hosting and CICD pipeline using GitHub. Sort of, I combine two different interesting concepts into one topic. So we'll show you like creation of the static website, which I have already created, but there are screenshots from the workshop perspective that if you want to create your own static website, you can follow the steps and get the site created. And the second segment of this, which is CI/CD pipeline, I want to show you the CI/CD pipeline in action. When you update the your web page, the pipeline gets hit and it fetches the content from the GitHub and updates the site without any manual intervention. About me, just some idea experience, just like everybody else. So software engineering, different technology, moved into the technology and then the cloud. That same technology interest, keeping up with the cloud technology, passionate about AWS technology, and every day is a new learning as AWS keeps coming up with some new services and add on to the existing services. So in this, we'll create the static website, we'll run a CI/CD pipeline, and then we'll see that how the website get updated without the intervention. S3, that's a popular one of the oldest surveys that AWS came up with. Simple storage service, any object you store, any kind of file, PDF, image, MP3, anything that you can think of. So it's an object storage. 99.99% availability, 11 durability. So very reliable service. Anytime I'm looking at AWS service, I do recommend that you set up your budget if you're playing with it. Get yourself familiarized with the cost explorer so that if you are not service, you know what your budget and cost gonna look like. Some of the steps to create this static website and then enabling it, will upload some simple files, organize the HTML, CSS, image, and other content file, and identify index. This is what we will see it in action. So start with the console, AWS console. Select S3 as the service, and you want to create a bucket. Give a name to that bucket. In this example, I have Chicago AWS Meetup as the bucket. Select the region, and pretty much you select the default setting to get the bucket created. By default, your bucket will block all public access. That's for the security reasons. But in this case, since we want to create a static website, we can block it. So uncheck the block all public access settings, and that will create your bucket. Once you have the bucket, the static website is a special setting here, which is by default disabled. So you edit it, enable the setting. When you're creating a website, you have to identify a home page and an error page. So this is the index.html and error.html. And that will give you a endpoint for the website. if you try to access the website, you will still get a 403 error, and that's because one step that is required for the static website is the bucket policy, and this is an example of the bucket policy that allow all the gets to the URL. Once this is done, and you hit the URL, that site is set up. This is as simple. So traditionally, getting a web server, getting a physical like web server, and then doing all the deployment is all pretty much done by getting your file into the S3 bucket and changing few parameters, organizing your files, and you have a very simple static website running in AWS. So this is just the live example, right? This is the URL, the site, the bucket that I have created, and we will make change to it and see how it gets refreshed. But this is an example of the static website, very simple page that I wanted to show you. Once you get the endpoint, what's next? Because it's still not a very friendly URL. It's a pointer and point to the bucket. So a couple of things that can be done next. By domain, AWS has another service, Route 53, or you can buy it from GoDaddy or any other domain provider. Update the CNAME tree and the public hosted zones, and you get a DNS of your choice that you have purchased. By default, it's a HTTP protocol. Of course, you can make it HTTPS by buying a certificate, and for that, AWS has ACM as another service that allow you to upload the certificate, create the certificate, and use the HTTPS protocol for your site. Services so far, AWS Budget, Cost Explorer, S3. Those are the ones that I have used. Route 53 ACM, CloudFront potentially can be used for a production website. Multiple ways to upload the contents. The simple way, use the AWS console and load the content. You can use an IDE of your choice. I use the VS Code. And if you are into CLI, infrastructure as code, then you can use CLI to upload your files into the bucket. So another simple example, like any other front end, AWS provides you an upload function. You can upload the files there. So this is the simple approach. If you are into an IDE, especially VS Code, very popular, there is AWS Toolkit extension that you can add to your VS Code IDE. And then that AWS Toolkit actually will provide you access to many different AWS services. S3 is one of them. Doesn't provide you access to everything, but it has all the popular services. So you can directly access your bucket, you can directly update your files using this extension. And then, of course, you can use the CLI. This one command I really like because, after I have all my files into the S3 bucket, I can just have a backup of that in my local by running this command, because it will fetch everything from my S3 bucket and give me a backup for that. So CICD pipeline, many different services that AWS provide. code commit, code build, code deploy, and pipeline that puts it all together to create the pipeline. So in our example, we are not using the code commit. Reason being that I'm using a GitHub, which is another popular code repository. So code commit is basically AWS service. If somebody doesn't already have GitHub or wants to use code commit, not using the code build because it's a static website. So there is no code to be built, but we do have files that we need to deploy. So that's why deploy, pipeline, and AWS S3 service. Going back to the basic, right? Like when we're talking about static websites, I mean, traditionally, years back when we started, there was just one server, somebody loading the file, and there is a static website for either for personal portfolio or small business, on-prem, more mature organization, multi-steps, physical infrastructure, the dev, the test, the product, all different kind of like, setups, expensive setup. With AWS cloud, it's all cloud, right? You don't have physical infrastructure here. In this example, you have the static website, you have the CICD pipeline, and everything is managed for you. Pretty automated. So next, I would like to show you the code pipeline and then how it updates the S3 bucket. So again, pipeline is another AWS service. So from the AWS console, you go find the AWS code pipeline, click on create pipeline, give your pipeline a name. You allow if you already have a role, then you use the role. If you don't have it, then allow code pipeline to create a role so that it can use it. It provides multiple options. It's very friendly. So in this example, I'm taking GitHub as the source for my source stage. It could be code commit. Once you have the GitHub selected, it provides you connect to GitHub if you are connecting it first time. If you have already connected it, it will remember your connection and you will find a connection. It will show you your repository in GitHub. It will show you your branch, and you can select all of that. You can select your deploy provider. You select the region. In my case, I have selected US East 2, which is Ohio region. The bucket name, my object key, and it before finalizing the pipeline, you will see a summary of it, and then you have a pipeline. So I have an active pipeline that I have created following these steps. So let's look at that pipeline in action. This is my current page that I have in S3 bucket. I have VS Code with AWS extension setup, and this is my index file. If I make a change here and say, add something here, let's learn together, and I save it. If you are familiar with VS Code, you will see that it's telling me that I have one change that I need to commit. So I will commit this change. This change is getting saved in my source repo, which is GitHub in this case. I do want to watch my pipeline here. So this is my pipeline. And let's see if it gets triggered. simply change it. Simulator. This is my pipeline. And if you notice, it just got triggered. And it just said, and if you, let's see what, you will see the progress on the corner, will show you which stage it's following. And in my case, it's a source, it's a deploy, and I have added an action, which is a manual approval, because I want to control that, even though it's all automatic. If I have a real working site, I do want to have some control mechanism. So this is the manual approval part. It's waiting for the approval. So at this point, if I refresh my web page, I still have my original web page. Change is not yet implemented. But if I go back to my pipeline and I say, okay, review, and I do approve this change, you will see that it's kicking up the next step in the pipeline. And once you see the check mark that it has deployed it, you will see deployed to prod just now. If I go back to my page here and refresh it, should have the refresh message. So very simple example, but the power of like AWS services without like having any on-prem server setup. There's a static website hosted in S3 bucket, the service with almost most durability. And you have a build process, you have a notification process, approval process built into, and a fully automatic deployment using the AWS pipeline. If let's go back. And again, this is the screenshot of the same real service that I was showing you. And if I look at my S3 bucket, it will show me the latest file in my bucket. So let's look at that also. So let's go to, let me refresh my S3 bucket here. And if I see my objects, you will see that all of these objects got updated just when you were doing this workshop. And again, if I go to my GitHub, then same thing. You will see the message that I put through the VS Code, where I said my commit is updated message. 4 minutes back, it got updated here, it got updated in S3, triggered the pipeline. So everything is working together. AWS services, AWS budget, cost explorer, S3, around 53, code pipeline, VS Code, GitHub. Many different tech stacks coming together and working as a cohesive piece here. Now, this was a very simple example. Of course, in real life, you're not going to have that simple example, but again, I have this site, just an example, right? This is a full site. I have posted it using the same pattern that we just went through, say S3 static bucket, of course, has a lot more objects into it, all the images, all the CSS files, HTML pages, but that's the power of technology that AWS service brings. That very simple setup, no web server that I need to worry about upgrading or hosting. I have a site with all the contents, all the structural contents I need, and is powered by AWS, and it has all the pipeline built into it. So these are all the services that we have used, and slides will be available in the GitHub. My information, if there is any question. Typically, the session takes much longer because everything it's a workshop, doing it like online. But knowing the technology and being in technology for so long, I also know that sometimes things doesn't go as planned. So that's why I had this screenshot. So if you don't have any connection, then I want to make sure that you see how it also gives, if you want to repeat the steps, then you have the visuals of those parameters that I have used to create these slides. Any question? We do have a few minutes for questions. Sure. S3 is actually, I think, one of the most cost-effective service. Lot of like, I have a lot of friends who work in and some big banks, and I don't have any discussion with them that is it's very interesting, like all the, like, we don't do a check nowadays, but like, you know, check. So the sheer volume of that from the banking and financial, just a good example of it. And cost range is really, I was actually curious as of this morning, just exploring that, you know, what does it do? Because I'm using this service, I'm not using it professionally, right? I have my site hosted. So I'm curious that how much, you know, it's gonna like bill me. So far, it has not billed me anything because it's a free tier, right? But I was curious. So I did AWS provided this really neat pricing calculator that I was looking at it. And again, I don't know like how accurate, right? Because it does ask for like multiple parameters, but I put some very simple parameters into it. And like I put like 10 GB data. I was trying to, this is what it, like, I'm not gonna be anywhere near to 10 gig data transfer, but just it's very cost effective, just like many other services are out there, right? Now it all, we have seen since morning in multiple sessions that like FinOps and cost, right? That's a very evolving topic. So that's why like when I started my presentation here, the first thing, of course, is that yes, it's very cost effective, but again, it's a shared responsibility model. So monitoring the cost or knowing the budget is a customer responsibility, right? But the tools are all out there to watch what the cost gonna be. You have a question?
So my question
That's a very good question. So now I have not done it in this scenario because this is a static website, right? So now the pipeline can be very extensive. So if I put your question in context, in this particular case, I can evolve the pipeline by adding the actions and driving that where to put the content, because I control that which bucket it's going. So like, an example that I was showing where I said, I built an action that deployed to prod, right? I can have an action which said deploy to dev. And once that looks all good, then I can trigger the next one, which basically deploy to prod, right? But that's a static website. But if I take your question in a broader context of pipeline where you are actually building the code and compiling it and then deploying it, it's a more complicated, like outside of this topic kind of a structure, then there are services which provide their own staging way to have the dev and test and prod deployment, right? Like if you say like API gateway, like it has its own stage that you can say that this dev, this is like test and this is prod and control from the pipeline. But yes, it's all different actions, all kind of actions that you can define and control the behavior. Yes. Amplify, I have not used it, to be honest. So I don't have like much comment on that. I know that another but okay. Got it. Got it. Yeah, I have not used Amplify, so I don't know how like especially with the S3 bucket, right? How that will like fit and all. This scenario is very like I find it very interesting because typically the